YouTube family. It's been a little bit of a hiatus for us in terms of posting videos. Obviously, we came out with that product review on the Brio trimmer, but now we're actually back with some real hair cutting content. I know a lot of our subscribers are here just for that reason, so hopefully you all enjoyed this video. What I'm showing today is a quick tutorial on how to do a bald mid-fade. Very straight to the point. My client has a pretty curly texture, but not really coily. You know, curly in the sense that it curls when it grows, but not necessarily coarse. But the video is pretty much just focusing on the fading technique, not so much the lineup or the beard or the face. Really just the fading technique, so just want you all to be aware of that. And of course, if you all enjoy the content, like it, share, and subscribe. That's really what helps the algorithm on YouTube circulate and recirculate and push, you know, the video that we put up. So if you find it helpful, like, share, subscribe. Hope you all enjoy it. So first step is always comb out your client's hair. That makes sure that once you start putting the clipper through it, you're not cutting through any weird curl patterns or taking off more hair than what it needs to be. That gives you as flat a canvas as you want. Second step is sanitization. So every single clipper that I use, unsure if you'll see it in the video, but I'm making sure that every clipper is sanitized, and even my combs, I'm brushing it off, spraying it down with Andis Cool Care. So on this step right here, the first thing I'm going to do is set my first guideline. So I have my magic clip with no guard. It's pretty much just the shear blade unprotected, and I'm closing it as you see right there. And then I'm going into the middle of his C cup. So the fade that we're doing right here is going to be a mid fade. So I'm going to bottom out at the bottom and then gradually get higher into his crown. But we're doing a mid fade, and I'm setting my first guideline with the guard closed. So for the purpose of time here, we took out the section when I bought out this bottom section, but all I did was went with my Andis trimmers, my Andis T-Outliners, and I shaved that same area that I used to set my first guideline. So that lower gradient at the bottom that we just cut, I used my Andis T-Outliners and went right over that same spot, and that's how you see it's a little bit lighter than what it was when we first started. So what I'm doing in this next section is I'm creating my second gradient, and what I have on the clipper is a number 1 guard. So that's a 1/8 of an inch if you're not using Wahl measurements, but 1/8 of an inch, and I'm taking it up about 1 inch above where that bald guideline is set. So being very careful, some barbers would go straight to the no guard all the way open to create this second gradient, but for his hair, you can see with that 1 guard, it still creates a pretty faint, pretty light second level. And so for me, after having some experience cutting his hair, I know what guard I want to use. It's a good practice and safety measure if you're not really sure, you know, what the texture of your client's hair is, to use a bigger guard just to make sure you don't cut off too much hair when you're setting your guidelines. So using that 1 guard, going up about 1 inch, and following the same shape that I used to create that bald line. So I've taken off that number 1 guard, and what I'm using is the unprotected guard, but I have it all the way open. So what I'm doing is trying to start that fade, and I'm not applying the unprotected guard flat against his head. What that would do for me is start to create a second line, and I don't want that. I have my first gradient that's balded out, then I have my second gradient that's the number 1. So with this unprotected guard all the way open, what I'm looking to do is really start to blur the middle of that second section. So that's what I'm doing here, and you can see I'm more so using the corner of the blade so that I'm not cutting off too much hair by using the entire blade. So in that speed up, I just changed the clipper from it being unprotected with no guard to putting on that 0 guard. So the 0 guard is the 1/16 inch that I said I'll come back to detail. Now I'm doing that detailing. The purpose of stretching the skin is so essential. The reason why I do that is to make sure, as you can see, that section is getting tighter and tighter, because remember, I only cut off about 1 inch, only used that 1 guard for about 1 inch of his head. And so the more intricate I need to get with that fade, I need it to be more spread out to make sure I'm not adding new lines or I'm not going too high. So that's why I'm stretching his skin with my thumb to make sure that area is wider for me. So I hit some of that detail work with that 0 guard in the second section. What I just did was take off the blade now, so I'm back to unprotected. And what you're going to see me doing here is slowly but surely adjusting that lever so that it eventually closes, and we're working on knocking out that bottom line that distinguishes the 0 section from the second section. So trying to start that fade effect with this unprotected guard here. There's really no one level of this lever that I'm sticking with. As you can see, I'm adjusting that lever for whatever the hair, however dark it is, however light it is, I'm adjusting to make sure that clipper is in line with it. So I couldn't even tell you what exact length it is. All I know is that I have to adjust throughout this fading process. So I just updated my clipper attachment and I put on the number 2 guard. My client, he likes to keep it dark sometimes on top. So instead of me updating to a 3/16 of an inch or a 1.5 guard, I'm going to a 1/4 inch to cut off less hair with this number 2 guard to create that seamless fade from a 3 to a 2 the higher up I get into his head. So this is the number 2 guard. And again, it's to not cut off as much hair from a 1 to a 1.5. So similar story with what we did when we started off with that 0. When we first started the haircut and then skipped the half guard and went into the 1. We're doing the same thing here. We skipped that 1.5 guard to use the number 2. But what I'm going to do is clean up that section with that 1.5, so it gives me more space to move with that 1.5. And it'll make for a more efficient blend as opposed to using the 1.5 straight out the gate. So now what I'm doing is updating from my 1.5 guard back to my 1 guard, but I don't have it closed. I have it all the way open. And what you'll see is that from a 1 to 1.5, there is still a lot of hair in between those guards. Whether the 1 is all the way open and the 1.5 is closed, like there's still going to be somewhat of a gap. So what I'm doing now with this 1 guard is cleaning up that section. So we did go from a 1 to a 2. So at some point I'm going to have to come back to that 1 guard, and that's what I'm doing right now. So what you'll see here is I'm starting to bounce back and forth between multiple guards. I saw some sections in the higher part of his head closer to the crown where we used that number 2 that needed to be touched up. So I'm using that 1.5 guard, or that 3/16 of an inch, just to clean up some spots. That's pretty much what I'm doing now, and the rest of this video is cleaning up areas of the fade that need to be more detailed. So I'm detailing with my 1.5. Right here, I'm switching my guard again. I switched it to the 0 guard, so the 1/16 inch, and I'm cleaning up. If you see any area that looks like there's still a light line, those are the areas that I'm looking to knock out. The higher I go, the further I open that blade up. The higher I go, the further I open that blade. So like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this is the first time we've posted a video of me cutting an actual client. I'm going to really strive to put more client tutorials out, because I know that there are other people, there's an other audience that wants to see that and needs more help in that regard. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback as it relates to the self-cuts, that they've been very thorough. So I'm going to keep, the self-cut tutorials coming, but I also want to get more client work out there as well, because I know people are looking for this. So instead of taking the number 3 guard and going against the grain, the higher I'm getting to his head, what I wanted to do here was take the number 3 guard and go down, right? Go with his grain into that number 2 section that we faded up to. And hopefully I can debulk some of that section in the top of his head without having to get higher and higher into the fade. So at this point, the fade is pretty much done. You can look and see that there's not much for me to do on the skin and the side of his head. So all I'm doing right now is trying to make it even. And what I did after this was I kind of freehanded without a guard. So I took off the number 3 guard and kind of freehanded his head to make sure it was even. We skipped the lineup part because we really just wanted this to be a tutorial on how to fade. And so what you see now is the end result. So that's the video. Hope you all enjoyed. As we said, the video was pretty straight to the point. Didn't want to belabor anything longer than what it needed to be. So hopefully the 13 minutes was just enough for you all that wanted a quick view on how to do a mid-fade. This type of content is what we're going to try to put out more of. I know the self-cuts are very helpful, and obviously the feedback has been good on that. But the cuts on clients is something that I feel like we could absolutely post more of and share with you all, because it's much easier to shoot me doing somebody else as opposed to shooting myself and having the misses on foot or on camera for a whole hour or so it'd be a lot easier to do it on other folks, and hopefully you all enjoy both of them. So be on the lookout for both of those.